My guest today on The Village Voice is Sarah Jane McGrath. Hello, Sarah. Sarah Jane, how are you?
Good, Peter. How are you?
I'm well too, thanks. There are a couple of things that I know you've been quite active in regard to. One is community gardening, actually creating food for ourselves. Another is the Wallam wetlands, which are currently under enormous threat. And the homeless situation in the Northern Rivers. I saw an ABC report on that in particular that said 37% of people in this region are not homed in the way that we would normally expect to be.
That's correct. And we have to look at why that has occurred. I mean, the most recent situation being the flood, and prior to that, people leaving the cities and buying up in this region. And that's all across the Northern Rivers. And that's anywhere from Tweed down to Coffs Harbour and out to Tenterfield. And wanting to make money, and so doubling rents, and then realizing it's not working for them, so then flipping that response and reselling. Prior to that is the so-called pandemic we had to have, and the waste of time that brought to everyone on the planet.
Yeah,
But particularly what it did for us is it cancelled everything. And just this morning I was listening to the ABC about how artists were completely cancelled. And I really don't understand what the difference is between the artists and the construction industry. I mean, it's all art as far as I'm concerned. Everything we do is art. This computer is art. The fact that we're Zooming is art. The clothes we wear, the structures we build, the graphic designs, the logos.
right.
So I think we've got a responsibility to look towards the food, shelter, water, arts, culture, community connection on country and being inclusive, because we are getting to this state of exclusivity, which is not appropriate for going forward. These are the things that do cause division, they cause wars, they cause panic. So if we can actually instill an opportunity, and I think particularly we need to be looking to our youth. As we all age, we need to look at what their world looks like and give them the opportunity and the support, not necessarily our knowledge, but the support to actually make executive decisions for the future. Do they have answers to homelessness? Do they have answers to putting food in the ground? Maybe not. But with our support, I believe that we can take that a lot further.
It's not so far back that almost everybody put food, a food source in the ground. You know, that it's not so many years ago that everybody had a thriving garden. That
Correct.
seemed to vanish in, I guess, in yours and my lifetime. It's a rare person now who puts, a garden in, that has a garden, even in large area spaces. They just don't. It's so convenient to go to the supermarket.
I think a lot of people were told, don't waste your time. You can't do that. I mean, it's a bit like the arts institutions. A lot of people in arts were told, oh, that's not good enough. That's not art. So then there is that, I can't do it. I don't know how to plant. I overwater things. I'm going to kill things. I don't understand seed structure. Everything keeps going to seed, but I don't know how to save it. So the fact is, we have not learned. If we
Yeah.
are learning together, it is very easy to show everyone how to do everything in about 15 minutes. And there's 100 ways to do different things as well.
Right. Yes.
So I really do believe if we were all coming back to what we know worked previously, we could definitely go forward with that. I know with my family, when they decided to get off the land, well, what were they doing then? Nothing. They were
Yeah.
living in suburbia. In suburbia, grow food. If your neighbour's growing food and your next neighbour's growing food, you've got a whole street full of food.
Yes.
It doesn't mean you're going to survive on that. There are very few people who know how to adequately never leave their land and survive. I mean, I pinpoint Joe Nemeth, who I'm really looking forward to getting in touch with in the near future. And she has basically created a world where she's lived without money for 9 years.
Right.
I really believe that people who are prepared to make that break can really show us uh, how to create abundance and how to swap and share both product and food and knowledge.
Yeah.
So I think we've got a exponential learning curve now, because whether you believe it or not, it's going to rapidly change, just like the 1920s all over again.
Well, yeah, and there's people like Tom Hartman and Jem Bendell and a range of others who are forecasting that should we not step into tending to ourselves in small groups, that catastrophe will occur. You know, that we are walking to the edge of that cliff. We are at a place where the ways in which we're accustomed to doing things and the solution finding that we're accustomed to receiving or being part of uh, will no longer serve. You know, we're talking about a very small percentages of forestry left in the world, natural forestry. We're talking about digging up the final pieces of natural forestry in order to get lithium for batteries for new cars, and it seems that there's kind of a pell-mell rush to that, and at a high level, if you like, at a corporate level, very little recognition of the drama that's being played out and the difficulty that is occurring for those who are not on $1 million income.
Well, as we know, just in the last 2 years, the whole solar system has ramped up. It's not the answer. It's definitely not the answer to where we need to go, because if we can't manufacture those things in the future, then we've got a failed system, whether it
Right.
be on a large scale or a small scale. I remember as a child, my father worked in BP, and they were doing solar conversations back then. I'm
Yes.
55 this year. That was 50 years ago. And the way they were supplementing that was by putting out BP products so that you could use them for your car, for your home. Um, that was great and that was wonderful. But, you know, the kibosh got put on that by all the other companies because they started doing the same thing. So the Ampols, the Caltex, the Exxon Valdez, they were all creating their own little product. And then the solar system got shelved. Like, we are 50 years too late in getting these things together.
I
I had a
agree.
little chat. I had a little chat to a woman on the street this morning, and she said, "Well, what do you think the solution is?" And I said, "The solution is wake up with the sun and go to sleep as the sun goes down, and get
Yeah.
all your jobs done in between. That way, you don't need electricity at all." And if
Yeah.
you were
Well, it's
completely off the grid, and if we weren't having this conversation, it would actually be okay, because there'd be someone next door to have that conversation with and
yeah.
work out how we were going to do it better. You know, I've run out of wire. I've got heaps. I've run out of star pickets. I've got heaps. I've got a gum tree that just fell down. You know, let's work out how to manipulate that.
Right.
I can't swing an axe. I can.
Yeah.
You know, without petrol, without electricity, it's actually a really softer existence.
So we're talking really about something I've been now engaged with for quite some time, and that's forming up solid communities of people. You know, like people who care for one another, essentially, which is what I perceive as what is missing, is that we largely have forgotten to care for one another. We've been
Absolutely.
taught and trained, look after yourself, and not much else beyond that.
That's correct. And I think that also comes with, do we come as a person with knowledge and skills to share, or are we the person who needs to buy in because we don't have any of that? And this is where we have a dichotomy of so-called community, because if community is just about money, then we've actually lost the point completely.
Yeah.
There's a lot of communities out there that are relying on money for the infrastructure to ratify the public demand, being that of councils, land management, and what have you. But on the private side, if you could match one person with every money-based shareholder, who actually came with skills and knowledge in order to put things together, I think you'd have a far more cohesive community in the future. But let's say next year there's no money. And how do we get those people together in order to create a conscious, inclusive space? Now, I hear from a lot of communities when I ask them these questions, how can I get onto your community? Oh, well, you have to come and do some workshops and you have to come to our events. And once we get to know you, we'll decide whether or not you're appropriate for our community.
Yeah.
I mean, what is appropriate? I mean, with so much mental health on the radar, with so much trauma over the last couple of years, what is appropriate? I mean, who deems the moral ground? You know, who is the moral majority? You know,
So
the
you're
people
talking,
are.
yes, you're talking about something we've been investigating quite deeply in the village and village matrix, in that we have an inclusive arrangement that is anybody can come. What we have discovered over bringing people together for 10 years is that some behaviors are not welcome while the person can remain welcome. That is, there are ways in which we need to monitor how we are with each other, because otherwise one person's behavior or a small group of people's behaviors can disenfranchise everybody else. So there are needs for those rules to be kind of brought into place by the community, without excluding. Yeah, to say that behavior we don't welcome here, but you as a human being are welcome here. You just need to, check in about your behavior.
I think bad behavior is a shining example of what we're all capable of doing. So I believe that in every event I've ever been to or organized, we've always made sure that there are people that are the go-to people for when something isn't quite right, so that that person can be heard, that they can also be cared for, that this might be a moment in time. It may not be their general MO. And I think those kind of people in place are really important for any situation, anywhere, anytime. You could be on the street and someone could be losing it. I'd be the first to step in and go, how can I help you? So, we need to gauge how to still keep them on board and work out what it is that they want to share. And we know it's a tried and true remedy that if you put your hands in the ground and you grow something, that it keeps your mental health in check. It doesn't matter what you are on the scale. And if you go and do the mental health training, which I implore everyone to do, go and do the mental health first aid training for not only adults but you can actually look at that scale, and you may not be schizophrenic, which is the highest form, but you may have anxiety, you might have depression, you might have dissociative, you might be bipolar, but all of these things are quite manageable. They're not all medicated. And even if they are, they're still manageable. So when people actually feel a sense of belonging and purpose and care for some living being, firstly themselves, and secondly what they just put in the ground. I mean, the way I'm talking right now, the thing that just keeps coming up is strawberries. If you can plant a strawberry and see a strawberry grow, and then you get to eat the strawberry without your hands, by just ducking down on the ground like a rabbit and just eating that strawberry, it's kind of like the most satisfying argument for how do we keep our mental health in check.
Yeah. And mental health, of course, is a really major role player since the, as you described it, pandemic we had to have. The thing that I observed in that time was that while there were lots of physical challenges and there were lots of things that people were supposedly required to do, this, that, and the other, that there was so little attention paid to the fact that, for example, several friends of mine were locked in a 23rd floor apartment in Melbourne and had a building manager that monitored their every move. They were in there for months and months and months with barely any contact with anyone else. That's one example. And we are now in the throes of recognizing, the way I perceive it anyway, that all of our mental health was affected. Everybody became a
Absolutely.
little bit more anxious. Everybody became a little bit more unsure that the choices that we've made are actually leading somewhere useful.
Absolutely. I had a lot of friends in the same position, not only in Australia, but also around the world. And, as they've unraveled their journey, um, it is a military exercise that if you make one location worse than every other location, that everyone else will turn around and go, well, I don't want that to happen to me.
Yeah.
So we are working with situations and governance beyond what is appropriate for people. And I think that trickles down now, especially after this last couple of years, that people don't feel as comfortable or as safe being part of a system.
Yeah.
I know when we talk and we talk about the village, we're talking about an off-grid, off-system environment that everyone is valued, that we no longer need a monetary structure in order to function,
Yeah.
that we consider that there is a lot more to life than having to go down the road and having a coffee every morning at the local cafe, that I'd rather do that in situ. I'd rather do that at home in my community, wake up with a beautiful start to the morning, all sit down for sunrise. And, so all of these things are
Yeah.
factors. And we know that those people had to cope in every possible way they could. I just say thank goodness that we had international telecommunications at that time, because I think we would have seen a lot of people leave the planet
Yeah.
because it would have been too much to bear. And again, I come back to the 1920s. A lot of people not only were sick through what was just another, generational deformity in the cosmos. Call it Spanish flu, call it virus, call it epidemic, whatever you like.
Yeah.
When these things occur, they are coming from our Earth, whether they're manufactured, redesigned, discombobulated, dissected, whatever they are. It's still part of our Earth. There's only one planet,
Yeah.
like where are we going? And if we're all standing on the core of the Earth every day, or sitting on the core of the Earth every day, then, we have to lead by example. I think, fighting the system is not healthy for our mental health forever and ever and ever. You were mentioning Wallam earlier.
Yeah.
It's amazing what we can achieve in this Northern Rivers region. We've been doing it for 50, 60, 70 years.
Yeah.
But sometimes you actually have to step back and you have to look at the greater good of all living beings. And, not only are we all homeless in our society, but so are the animals.
Yeah.
We continue to make them homeless as humans. We continue to drive cars. It's not like everyone turned up on a bus. Was it electric?
Right.
Was it solar powered? Was it wind powered? I mean, we're all double standards, is what I've actually come to learn in my years on the planet.
Yeah.
We're all creating these spaces where we want to go and support some amazing cause, but how are we getting there? And what are we achieving? And are we going to the highest realm in order to make a difference? Or are we just like stomping around on the ground, getting arrested? How are we
Yeah.
going to do this in a better way? I think about John Lennon, and give peace a chance. Everyone needs somewhere. Everyone needs a job. There are people who step back from Wallam because they were concerned for their safety, the safety of their family. They were being threatened by people who obviously don't understand that this isn't about threatening other people. This is
Yeah.
about saying, hey, dear CEO, if your grandchildren find out that you did this, how are you going to feel in the future? That's not a threat. That's a fact.
That's
You know,
something for
are
you to
they
ponder rather than any threat. Yes.
exactly, exactly. So I think we've got to stop running around blaming individuals for what's actually going on. Like, we have created this, we have allowed this, we've allowed it for a really long time. And if we can show people that there is a better way, I often think about, okay, put the places at Wallam, but make them floating barges,
Right.
because
Yeah.
it is going to flood. Make it so it's not actually impacting the earth, make it so that it actually rises above. Make it so that it's not made of brand new materials. Make it so that it can break down in the future, that it can be
Yeah.
composted back into the existence. So why aren't we looking at better ways to do things? Is because we're still fighting.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, in the past, I have been involved in some direct actions with regard to CSG and well, a range of other things when I was involved with Planet Radio, and recognized that while it had, it could have a kind of feel good result. Um, it never really seemed to achieve anything much, and you
Mm,
get occasional examples where it does, but largely it didn't achieve anything much except to bring a group of people together going, we did that, and
mm,
not much more. So
mm.
I know there's many people who are supporting direct action right now, particularly in the youth. That's it's something that's very prevalent. And as an older person, I'm often saying to them, look, yeah, I can see that you have a need or a desire to do this. Perhaps it's fine because you're at that point in your life. And actually redesigning anew rather than trying to stop what is a steam train or a bullet train. It's like standing in front of a bullet train and saying, please stop. The likelihood is very
I
small.
agree. Yeah, I agree. And, if we're talking about finding places for people to coexist, then we need to look at a new way to do that. I
Yeah,
often come back to dynamics, in a dynamic field, everything is considered,
yeah,
nothing is set aside. So if we're looking at the circle of grief, another dynamic system whereby you can come full circle and be happy again. I mean, I'm a
right,
prime example of that. I've actually been saying this week, I think I'm the happiest I've been in years. Why? Because I'm no longer homeless. Um,
right.
After 3.5 years of rapid, what I would consider rapid mental health, being in a cycle every day, I think that lends itself to looking at things in a new possibility. Everyone is going to either love you or they're going to hate you. It's just a fact of life. When you look at how you can support, um, how to love better, stronger, with more sincerity, I
Yeah,
think it will actually give you a new dimension about how to do things. And I really do believe that um, the fighting um, will actually make us more fearful.
yeah,
And I believe it will make us more prone to long term trauma. And as we know, and as people get burnt out. I would say after 3.5 years of campaigning for homelessness, I definitely had a burnout mode. But
yes,
recombobulating myself, I'm actually looking more to what is our sustainability, like the village. What that means as far as I'm concerned, and the people I can gather together so that we can actually expedite that.
Yeah.
So I think if we're putting ourselves into positive change as opposed to reactive change or defending change, I mean, as an activist since I was 16, I've always been a pro-activist. I've never been standing there as a defender. I don't want to defend anything because I think everything has its place. But I think, proactive change means that we've reconsidered what we're going to do in order for us to take responsibility as a larger community. I mean, if we ever were cut off in the dimensions that we were in 22 again, I really do believe that we may not have learnt for the first time or the second time, but we're going to have to learn the third time because maybe those waters won't subside and we will be stuck with whatever we have, and there will be no trucks coming and there will be no communication. And if we don't all have a horse and cart, we may not be able to get to, connect with other people. So I think more community land is the way to go. I think we need to speak to the councils locally and get the system set up now, regardless of whether their system exists in the future or not.
Yeah, it's that is one of the really challenging parts of it, is that most administrations have very little interest in anything other than the structure that is already in place. And one of the directions that I'm certainly trying to encourage the village as an organisation, or Village Matrix as an organisation, to go is really similar to the original people. Is that, sure, we'll buy a piece of land because that's kind of necessary in our current system. You have to. You can't just claim it. Although once we did, we just claimed the whole damn thing. But, buy a piece of land and say, okay, well, this is not necessarily for 12 families to live on. This is actually all of the people that contributed to buying this are now responsible for the land rather than the other way around. And anyone else who's also interested in taking responsibility for stewarding this land, for repairing it and so on, is also welcome. And the vast idea is then that fans out to literally hundreds, maybe thousands of properties where anyone who's ever had anything to do with it, or anyone who's willing to go, I'm willing to remain at peace, or do my best to remain at peace with those people that I interact with, and bring that to my attention, everyone is welcome. No longer do you need 5 acres of land to put a house on, or a town block to put a house on, because, you have a place. We all think about it. We're the only beings on this good earth that say that even though you're born here, you don't automatically have a place.
I
You
think
have to
the
buy your
word that
place.
comes to mind for me, which I've been talking with people, particularly around the homeless scenario, is perpetuity. Now, a long time ago, we used to just hand down and hand down and hand down to generations and generations, any type of land, suburban, urban, rural, remote. I think we need to start doing that as well, because I think we also need to have a look at the people who really want to stay on their land as they age, but they can't do the upkeep anymore. What if everything that they used to do by themselves with their family, who may or may not exist anymore, and everyone's wanting to put them in a home so that they can be cared for? Well, what if we were caring for whoever needed to be cared for on their land? And, what if that farmer said, okay, 100 people would be great. I mean, it's a bit like Woodstock, it's a bit like Glastonbury, it's a bit like those places that go, yeah, just come, let's make it happen. Let's find out what people are good at. Let's find out what people want to learn. And so in perpetuity means that it just keeps folding and folding. If our systems are dead, we will have perpetuity again.
Yes.
And I think that's something that we need to consider. We started looking at that with regards to the public housing, or apparently the lack of public housing, the social housing in the Northern Rivers. And I started talking to North Coast Housing and say, well, why aren't you contacting people who maybe don't have family and just want to give their belongings back to community?
Right, yes.
because, you know, we're the only area that has had to take a lease on housing in the region. All the other communities across New South Wales are actually funded directly by the government. Why are we on a lease? That's kind of really weird. So if we take a leaf out of their book and we start leasing land, I mean, it's something that we started doing with the community garden when Jeanette Martin, Jacqueline Wills and myself and a myriad of community turned up. We started with, you know, we are all responsible for this. And then gradually we leased some of the land in order to put the money back in the coffers, in order to make the system work effectively. Buy the things we need, buy the secondhand paint, the eco building materials. When we do that kind of thing, it wouldn't matter whether it was pumpkins for cucumbers, really.
Yeah.
You know, we would find what was needed and then ask for donation. You know, we may not have the pleasure of doing that in the times to come if we don't have the facilities in place now to accommodate for the things that we need to do. I myself are living with less. That was my design in 2017. I wrote it down on a piece of paper and, you know, I only got it on the 9th of January this year, but I am living with much less. I hate turning on the generator. The solar system needs to be bolstered. I hate doing that. I love running the fire and having the wetback and be able to have hot water at will. But then I've got to get my wood from somewhere, and I'm not the one shopping it. I'm not a lumberjack. I don't have any capacity to do that. So I've got to rely on the guy down the road. If he can't deliver because he no longer has a vehicle, then I have no water. I have no power. I'm going to just have to put some more clothes on. I won't be able to run a water tank. You know, I will just have to make do with whatever occurs. And I think when we get to that point and we're living with less and less and less, I think we get to a space of being a little bit more equipped, a little bit more content.
Yes.
You know, knowing that everything that goes in the ground needs to work in order to live. If everything fell over tomorrow, I'm probably not ready, but I've got a lot of greens and a lot of marigolds, and I'm sure just, you know, a little bit of that every day will just keep me going. Maybe I'll just sleep more, you know, and maybe we need to do that. You know, maybe we're not rested enough. Maybe we're always moving on to the next thing, waiting for the next thing, you know, being entertained by the next thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's just getting that smaller environment, getting a little bit more succinct, you know, living with less, not needing to buy anything particular, maybe all of us buying in bulk, you know.
Working locally as well, I think, is really
working
important.
locally.
You know, the slow
Maybe
movement
it's right next door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd like you to give yourself a quick promo. It's fairly late in the field, but a quick promo about Witchy Tea.
So in 2020, a girlfriend asked me to come and work at her florist, which is Georgie Taylor in Florista in the Bullumbar Arts Centre. It was a crazy time. I was happy to be there. I love her energy. I love what she's put into the industry in the Northern Rivers for a long time. And every day I'm staring out into the M Arts, and there was this bar that was never going to happen because it was 2020 and nothing was happening. And I kind of went, oh, do we really need another bar? Do we really need another liquor license? I mean, I have an RSA. I've been in the industry for a long time. I just went, we need tea. We need to get more healthy. We need to deal with people's guts. We need to deal with their mind, you know, their sense of well-being, you know, get a bit of sunshine in, you know, deal with ailments.
There's probably enough alcohol outlets already.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But there's not enough tea. And people don't understand tea isn't just about drinking it. Tea is about the product itself. You literally can eat it. If you can drink tea, you can eat it. So we don't need to drink black tea. We need to drink things that are grown locally. So I started experimenting with everything I could find, everything that I could grow. And then when I was homeless, I started resourcing local people growing local organic. What is organic, we say? It's people who haven't bothered to put any chemicals in the ground, no chemicals in the food, are getting heirloom varieties.
Yeah.
Whether it's completely organic, we don't know, because we're dealing with the 5 elements and how are they at play for us.
Well,
But
and we're
these
also
people are
dealing with
willing.
we're dealing with a huge amount of chemical that has been used essentially everywhere. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
And in everything we do.
yeah,
So I was trying to do that as much as possible. So I was getting kilos and kilos at a time. And wherever I ended up, in different locations at different times, and out of the van, in a house, property sitting, house sitting, dog sitting, cat sitting, donkeys, whatever, I started looking at how to do this really effectively. And the best way to effectively look after product is to dehydrate it. Dehydrating can last for a really long period of time, as we know with seeds. The next level for that is also looking at roasting and oiling and preserving and pickling and things like that. But tea is really easy. You add water, boom, it rehydrates. It's snapped in all its goodness. So come to this present day, the tea has been in a couple of different locations. Everyone's really excited, but everyone also turns up and goes, have you got coffee as well? And it's like, no, I don't have coffee. I have tea. Let me make you something with cacao in it, and let's see how that goes for you. And they have it, and they just go, oh, that's exactly what I needed. I just needed a pick me up.
yeah.
Okay. So, coffee being a bit of a rape and pillage all over the planet, and we do love it. But the reality is it's not a sustainable product unless we've got growing and people to harvest it. It
Yeah.
can't be harvested through mechanized situations because it just will kill the tree. So you've got to have people picking. So the same with tea. If you anything you want to have as a tea, you can grow. It's so easy to do.
Oh,
And
and I think tea is also it's differently designed than coffee. Coffee is definitely that kind of hardcore pick me up for the short term. Teas have all sorts of impacts from better breathing to rehydrating to helping your liver,
yes,
kidneys, and lungs, whatever. It's
that's right.
extraordinary if you actually investigate the huge number of things that we overlook, even just in our yards, as you know, as possibly something to steep and drink and provide us with all sorts of benefits.
Well, it's lovely that you say that because, farmers' friends are a great form of antioxidant and they're a great weed. I mean, if you have too much of anything, it's not good for you. If you have too many greens, it's not good for you.
Yep.
But also taking that dehydration and bringing it right down to powder, you can actually store powder for a lot longer as well because it doesn't
Yep.
take up as much space, and that product won't take in the moisture as much as a dehydrated product. So then you've got powdered greens. I mean, every day I have a little sprinkle of powdered rocket and I love it.
Good. Great.
A little sprinkle of either dehydrated or powdered mushroom that I have collectively sourced from local people or got from the farmers markets. Um, I'm looking at how we can retain all of those things, the powders, the dehydration, the pickling, the oiling, anything that's actually going to give us a possibility to store food for the future.
Yeah,
And if everyone learned how to do that, which is the old ways anyway,
it
and a
is.
lot of
Yes.
people say all that stuff where they used to do, we've forgotten how to do it. We haven't forgotten. We just never learned.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you haven't learned, you don't know. And you can only learn by example. So if, I tell you how to do it, for an hour, and then you tell the next person, did we need to go to a course for $3,500 to learn how to do it? No.
Right. So I would actually encourage you to come to some editions of the village and teach some people because largely that's what we do there. We'll play, sing, laugh, and then even people who've never taught a workshop before will teach a workshop on everything from macrame to how to lop a tree to you name it. So it is actually about developing a whole range of skills in such a fashion so that we at least have some preparedness for the fact that, in my view, we don't, we have maybe maximum 40 or 50 years of being able to operate on the system we're operating, just on the basis that we're running out of soil all over the world, let alone any of the other matters that are challenges to us. So it's time. It's
Well,
actually time right now.
absolutely. Absolutely. I'd love to teach people how to make soil in 15 minutes.
Great. Then
Yeah.
we'll see you at some future villages, shall we?
Absolutely. I will accept all invitations.
Fabulous. Um, if I were to ask you just one final question, what's really fired up in you right now?
What's fired up in me right now? I only ever talk about what I'm doing. And up until just a couple of weeks ago, I was only doing me. And I sometimes get a little bit bored about that. So just recently went to a local workshop in Nimbin a couple of weeks ago. I have a friend here that I've known for 17 years, and she and I are both fired up about sustainability. So we're looking
Brilliant.
at creating a festival of sustainability. We don't know what it's called. We know it's on Route 32, which is the old tourist Route 32.
Yeah.
We know that there are people who are willing to support us. So I think on the edge of everything, it's about showing people how to do it without mechanical means.
Yeah. Okay.
I really think we're at a time that if we drive to see an opportunity, then we need to know that that opportunity is so easy to create for ourselves. So we're looking at putting a festival on next year, but we're also looking at a couple of different lead up situations. So I think it's really sustainability and youth, and that's our
Yes.
future. Yeah.
Thank you. I've been enjoyed very much speaking with you and look forward to doing that again, as well as seeing you at some villages coming up.
Awesome, Peter. Thanks so much for your time and what you do. I know we're both on the same page and it can only get better.
Indeed. Sarah Jane McGrath, thank you for your time today, and let's talk again soon.
Yeah.